I'm so excited to be here, and I know Michelle said that I spoke at the very first charter event. Hi, Nathan. Sorry. And I had written a poem about work, and I'd read it to Aaron and Kevin and the team, and Kevin kind of looked at me. It was on a screen, and he was like, "That's a good poem." He was like, "Do you want to read that to more people?" And I said, "Yes." And that is what started my journey with charter. So it's like really exciting to be back 3 years later and to think about what's changed and what hasn't changed. So we're going to be talking about gathering design, which you may be familiar with. You may think, does she work on a farm? Like where did she come from? But gathering design is a lot of different things. But I'll share a quick example to give you an idea of how small it could be or how big it could be. So earlier I was talking to Maggie, the amazing event coordinator for all of this, and I said to her, the doors here are amazing. And she said, "Oh my God, you noticed." Maggie, I'm talking about you. I said, "The doors don't click. Have you noticed that? You can walk in and out and it's really easy." And she said, "A, thank you for noticing that." And she said, "B, that is why Jay loves this space, is because of that reason." And just think about how that one factor affects your ability to move in and out of here and not be disrupted. And that is an element of gathering design. And I am so excited to have the new role at Dropbox as Gathering Experience Designer. And like a lot of you, I've been a Dropbox customer for 15 years, and I'm not necessarily proud of my file organization. But I was looking at my Dropbox account the other day, and what it really is it's this repository of all of my dreams and all the things I started and all the things I didn't start. And to now be working at Dropbox and to help them think about what is this chapter of work about is just super exciting. So I'm super excited to tell you about this. So I'm going to be talking about what we're doing around gathering design at Dropbox. And we've been asked several times today, what is it that you want people to walk away with? And if you leave with nothing else, here's what I want you to understand. And this is actually what I learned from all of my years working in the dating industry, is that it's never the big gestures that connect people. If you talk to people about their relationships, like what made them fall in love, what made them connect, what made them bond, it's usually these really small, overlooked moments. Those are the things that people end up saying was the shift in the relationship. And so a lot of gathering design is understanding that. And so I'm bringing my lens from dating to the world of work. So we are virtual first, which is different than remote or hybrid or in-office. It is its own category. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to constantly experiment to understand how relationships are changing. And I'm sorry, that is the one thing I want you to really walk away with. What it takes to build relationships today is different from what it was 2 months ago and different from what it was 2 years ago and 20 years ago. So we have to constantly be asking ourselves, what do we need to do now to build relationships? So just a couple of numbers to ground us and to sort of give you a snapshot of what's going on with Dropbox is that 70% of new hires cite virtual first as the reason that they joined Dropbox. 90% of people say that virtual first is the reason why they stay. 87% of respondents say they have a greater impact working in virtual first compared to other working models. And 71% say they feel more connected to their team after attending an offsite. And if you kind of put all of these numbers together, it kind of tells you what is working and what we need to be monitoring, what we need to be on top of. And so I'm super focused on the offsites and the gatherings and the interactions so that we never take that for granted and we're constantly reinventing what it means to build a relationship today. Which brings me to the current definition of gathering design. It is shaping gatherings and shaping in-person moments so that your experiences are aligned to your team's goals. And this is very important before, during, and after you come together. Gathering is not just about when you meet, it's about what happened before, and it's what happens afterwards. And all three of those things have to be considered. So what are some things we need to look out for when it comes to gathering? I don't know if some of you remember this picture. It like blew up on social media last year for its lack of diversity. But when I saw this picture, I wasn't looking at it. I mean, I did notice the lack of diversity, I'm not going to lie. But what I was looking for was this picture taken for the camera, or was it taken for connection? Because I have been a part of many of these sorts of, very, very expensive, fancy dinners. We're in a cool farmhouse. We're all seated together. But then I started talking to people afterwards. And this is what would not show up on the survey. And what people would say was actually, I liked the dinner, but I couldn't hear anything. There were 8 conversations going on. I was overstimulated. Even the most extroverted person can struggle in these environments. And I'm not saying that this is bad, and I'm not saying you should never do it. But what we need to understand today is, what do people really need in this moment? And a lot of people are struggling with their human skills. This can be a lot. And so thinking about, what do people really need in that moment? What does their team need? And is it this big dinner table? Or is it something else? One of the things that I think is so important is, like I said, always updating what your repertoire is. I love a good icebreaker. But sometimes we can default to the icebreaker as our checkbox to say that we got people connecting and talking. And right now, the world that we're in is demanding more from us. And so yes, we love a good icebreaker, but we also have to be thinking about, is this really what the moment needs? Or does it need something else? And pro tip, do an icebreaker, but never use the word icebreaker. And that alone will transform how people respond to it. In the 1960s, Edward Hall did an area of study called proxemics. And this was studying how close or far apart people needed to be to each other. And this relates to that dinner party picture I showed you earlier. The ideal setting for a conversation where everybody can have eye contact and everybody can hear each other is actually 6 people. And so when you're designing a team gathering, sometimes you need to think, do we actually need a 4-person table, a 6-person table, a 12-person table? There are no right or wrong answers to this, but what is important is that you're actually asking the question, what should the seating arrangement really be for the dynamics and for the outcomes that we're trying to build? So I know that right now everybody wants solutions to the connection issues of today, but sometimes what's more important is to be asking really, really good, important questions. And like I said, we are a virtual-first, lab mentality organization. And so we're constantly updating what we're trying at events and offsites and trying to figure out, again, what does this team need at this moment, given what they need to do, and really, really crafting bespoke solutions. So just some of the questions that we're asking: what connection tactics really make sense in person, and what should be done virtually? Because it's not always the same thing, and some things are built better for different platforms. What's the best way for a team to learn about each other before they arrive at the offsite? And again, what about after? Sometimes we can use offsites to build all the relationships, everybody refill in one moment. And sometimes there are things that we can do to get people primed and prepped before they even arrive there so they can make the most of that time. What's the best way to design a name tag? And do you even need a name tag? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe it should have information, maybe it should say nothing. But again, simply asking this question can transform an event. And then how do we blend intentional moments with organic possibilities? I think it's great when people want to be intentional and purposeful, but sometimes how that can express itself is over-programming. How do you make sure that people have structure, but there's also plenty of time and space and bandwidth to just be, to have that meandering conversation that has no point, to run into someone in the bathroom, to bump into someone in the hallway? And the question that I always think about, especially as someone who's new to an organization, so I have a special lens right now, is what are the best ways to weave in new teammates? After the onboarding, how do you make sure that people have multiple opportunities to get to know each other, to dimensionalize each other and really share who they are and what their talents are? Now here's something that's really great and really tricky at the same time. I'm almost done, I swear. I will wrap up. So gathering is a long-standing feature of being human. We all sort of know it, we know how to do it. And the fact that it's a human feature is why we don't look at it critically, right? Our familiarity with it sometimes blocks our ability to think about it critically. And we actually do have to think about it critically. When we get together, it doesn't happen as much anymore. So when it does, we have to make it count, and we have to know that we have made the most of people's time. Because as I will keep driving home, what it takes to gather is constantly changing. That thing, that name tag that killed 2 years ago may not be the right name tag now. That door that didn't make a sound, well, actually right now we might need a door that does make a sound. And constantly updating what we're doing is critical. So we are virtual first, but in order to deliver on this lab mentality and in order to constantly think about what does it take to connect today, I'm working on a framework that we call vital moments. And what this is understanding what is the most important life-giving human moment that this team needs to have right now. And this allows us to constantly shift and to be imaginative and creative and really think about what needs to happen today. And here are just some examples of vital moments. It's a very, very broad range. It could be something as simple as slowing things down. It could be telling a contextual story. How did this happen? Something as simple as that can really, really help people understand where their team is headed and where leadership is headed. Owning an error. When we are apart, there are so many things that we can do that maybe didn't hit the mark. And owning an error can be crucial. And then even something as simple as giving credit. How did this project get done? Making sure that humans are attached to their contributions. So one vital moment that I love is a toast. Now, I know everyone likes a toast, but a lot of y'all are not doing it right. Toasts have always been important, but right now they are critical. And I first learned about toasts when I studied relationships. Now, if you think about it, weddings are a hallmark. Toasts are a hallmark of many weddings. And what's interesting is if you talk to people, most people will remember a wedding by the toast. Not by the food, not by the decor, but by the toast. Because the toast tells you what you're supposed to pay attention to, what everything means, and what you're supposed to remember. And now toasts were originally created to find out if your drink was poisoned. So you clinked glasses with someone, right? A little liquid might transfer. And that's how you knew that your drink was not going to kill you. But now toasts have a different role. We're not going to die from our drink, but we might die if we don't use our moments together in the best way possible. So I'm going to teach you a really simple recipe for a toast, and then you are going to do it when you go to the happy hour. Okay, is it a happy hour or is it a lunch or? It's a midday gathering. Okay, so here is the very simple formula for doing a great toast. You want to make sure you have everyone's attention. You ever seen someone give a toast and like half the room is still talking? Don't do that. Wait for everyone to be listening. It's critical. And then you're going to start with a fact that someone may not know. As soon as you say, you might not know, something in your brain is going to pay attention. You're going to turn, I don't know. I don't know. We all want to know. Vivid appreciation. Something that people can see and remember and feel. And then finally, you're going to raise a glass. So I'm going to teach you. Okay, so here's the toast that we're going to make, and this is what I want you to do during the happy hour. I want you to think about one person who had an impact on your career. It could be a former coworker, a mentor, a boss, an enemy. It's fine. Someone who had a positive impact on your career. So I'm actually going to thank the person who taught me PowerPoint. So you may not know this. I entered the corporate world and I had never used any kind of slideware, ever, because I'd come from restaurants and hospitality. So I did not know, and I was terrified because I had to build a presentation. So I found a woman at work. I said, hey, your PowerPoints look really good. Can you teach me this? She spent 2 days with me, ordered Chinese food, and taught me PowerPoint from top to bottom. And her name is Stephanie Kelly. And without her, I would have absolutely been fired from this job. So we're gonna do a little toast to my friend Stephanie Kelly, my best friend, a little toast. Okay, so that is what you're gonna do. You are gonna tell someone about a person that impacted your career. You're gonna say their name, something they may not know, give a little tiny snapshot so that it feels real to them, and then you're gonna raise a glass. Can we all do that? Thank you so much. What I want to leave you with, again, is that at Dropbox, we are really thinking about this. We are building tools and frameworks to help people realize what kind of gathering they need. We call it the gathering matrix. And we know that such an important part of the employer brand right now, people want to feel human. It's very exciting how much technology is being developed, but people really want to feel human. And we want to make sure that when they are at Dropbox, they're not just doing the best work of their lives, we are helping them keep their human skills intact. Thank you very much. Thank you to Kevin, Aaron, and Jay, and Marcella, and Michelle. Thank you so much. Thank you.